Today's story is so dangerous it could freeze your blood. Set in the heart of the Wild West, where blizzards swallow entire valleys and legends are written in gunfire. It's a place where fate and death ride the same trail, and only one makes it out alive. It all began with a single stolen horse, a small act of desperation that was powerful enough to awaken a ghost the frontier had been praying would never return. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Through a brutal Montana winter, 3 hunted outlaws drove their worn-out horses past the breaking point. The cutting wind carried rumors of their crimes. The Marreck brothers, whose train heists had left empty vaults and dead lawmen scattered across 4 territories. Behind them, telegraph wires buzzed with alerts, and ahead stretched the frozen sweep of the Bitterroot Valley, where survival meant stealing fresh mounts before their own collapsed. What pushed them wasn't only the storm rolling in, but the knowledge that every lawman and bounty hunter west of the Mississippi now carried their faces. A $5,000 bounty on each head had turned former allies into potential traitors. Their only hope was the Canadian border. Yet the horses they'd lifted from a Helena livery 3 days earlier were already failing. What the fugitives didn't realize was that their next move would put them in the path of Dain Marreck, a legendary army scout turned rancher whose name still echoed around campfires from Texas to Montana. During the Apache Wars, his rifle never missed at distances other men wouldn't even try. By sunrise, they would learn why old-timers claimed Marreck could clip a butterfly's wings at 300 yards, and why he'd spent 5 years trying to bury the ghosts of those he'd killed. This story isn't just about stolen horses or frontier law. It's about how 3 desperate men learned that some talents can't be buried, and some reputations are written in blood. Dawn washed the Bitterroot in clean white, untouched except for the tracks Dain Marreck followed along his fence line. At 58, he moved like a mountain cat. Each step measured, his eyes reading every mark in the snow. His prized black mare, Ashthorn, paced beside him without a lead, her dark coat cut sharply against the pale land. She had shared 5 quiet years with him, more partner than property. The ranch was small by Montana standards, 800 acres tucked against the mountains, a solid cabin, 2 barns, and the finest horse shed for miles. To passing travelers, it looked like any other homestead scratching out a living. They never noticed how every building covered an approach, or how the corrals were braced with gates strong enough to stop a charging bull. Marreck knelt at the north fence, studying fresh tracks. "What do you think, girl?" he murmured to Ashthorn. Her ears twitched, nostrils flaring at a scent carried on the wind. Horse thieves had grown bolder, hitting lonely spreads across the valley. Most folks thought Marreck an easy target, a quiet man living alone with some of the best stock around. Elira Penn, who ran the telegraph office in Hamilton, had warned him just yesterday. "They're moving through the valley, Mr. Marreck. You might want to hire some hands," she'd said, worry softening her voice. Like most in Bitterroot, she didn't know about the custom Winchester hidden beneath his bed, or the legend that made old fighters cross themselves when his name was spoken. Ashthorn suddenly stiffened, head lifting toward the distant tree line. Marreck followed her gaze, his hand drifting instinctively to where a rifle used to rest. The morning was too still. No birds, no distant whinny of his other horses. Something wasn't right. The cabin door creaked open, and Selka, his housekeeper for 3 years, stepped onto the porch. She was the only soul in the valley who knew who he really was, why he still spent hours at the hidden range behind the property. "Breakfast's ready," she called, but the edge in her voice said more. Trouble was coming. 2 riders were closing in from the main road, snow spraying behind their mounts. From their posture and the badges flashing in the sun, Marreck knew they were lawmen before he saw their faces. Ashthorn gave a low nick, sensing his tension. 5 years of peace, Marreck thought. 5 years trying to forget the feel of a rifle in his hands. The look in a man's eyes when he realizes he's been hit from a distance no one should reach. 5 years pretending to be just another rancher, running from a legend carved into his old army gun, but watching the riders approach. Dain Marreck knew his past had finally found him. In the West, a man's reputation was like winter in the mountains. It always came back. Garin Blythe dismounted at the gate, his deputy beside him. Their horses shied away from Ashthorn's size. The marshal's face was tight with news he hated to bring. Marreck knew that look. He'd worn it too many times in war. "Trouble's brewing," Garin Blythe said. "The Raddick brothers busted out of Montana Territorial Prison last night." Marreck didn't answer. He didn't need to. Ashthorn shifted behind him, sensing the storm in her master. "How'd you—" the deputy started, but Blythe cut him off with a glance. "I was there when they were sentenced," Dain Marreck said, his voice low as memories swirled like a winter squall. 2 years back in Helena. Strange thing about that trial. Nobody ever found the gold from their last heist. Selka stepped out with coffee, placing the tray on the porch rail with steady, careful hands. The deputy's eyes widened as Selka drew back her shawl, revealing a finely beaded medallion, the mark of a tribal healer. Few folks knew she had once been one of the sharpest scouts in the territory before choosing a quieter life. "You're that Marreck?" the deputy whispered, awe finally hitting him. "Long shot Marreck, the one they write about in the papers?" "The stories grow bigger every year," Dain cut in, but the deputy couldn't stop. "They say you can snuff out a candle flame from 200 yards without touching the wick. That you dropped 5 Apache warriors with 5 shots in a fight. No one should have survived." 7, Selka said softly, and he gave them every chance to walk away. Dain's hand brushed his left shoulder, where an old arrowhead still rested too deep to remove. His last fight before he laid down his rifle and tried to find peace in this valley. "The Raddicks are headed this way," Garin Blythe said, studying him. "Word is they're hunting fresh horses. They've already killed 2 guards and won't think twice about more." "There's more," Selka added, her voice carrying quiet gravity. "Tell him, Garin." Blythe shifted. "Their youngest, Callan Raddick. He was there on your last scouting run. One of the young warriors you had to—" The morning suddenly felt colder. Dain remembered the boy who refused to stand down. After that day, he'd tried to leave the killing behind, but some pasts never let go. 5 years ago, Dain said, "I buried my rifle, my badge, and built something peaceful here." His eyes drifted toward the pasture, to the young colts he'd been training, each worth a small fortune to the wrong kind of man. "I remember," Blythe nodded. "After 38 confirmed kills—" 42, Dain corrected. "The army only counts the ones with witnesses." Ashthorn nudged his shoulder, a quiet comfort. Blythe exhaled. "We're warning every rancher, doubling patrols. But if they're driven by revenge, they won't hit you head on. Men like that go for what you love." Dain's gaze stayed on his horses, a chill settling in his bones. His legend wasn't built on luck. It was built on knowing where men would strike before they ever tried. Blythe saw the look and knew it well. The same one Dain had worn before blood was spilled. By midnight, Cale Raddick and his brothers huddled in a shallow cave, their prison clothes stiff with sweat and snow. 3 days of running had left them hollow, hounds still howling in their ears. Their stolen horses had gone lame miles back, forcing them on foot. We'll never make Canada like this, Jex whispered, shaking as he checked their last 4 rounds. Kyle studied the valley below through a stolen spyglass. A lonely ranch sat against the foothills, dark except for one upstairs lamp. More important, fine horses gleamed in the corrals. That's our way out, Kyle muttered. One good horse each gets us across the line, Bran said, uneasy. But look at how those buildings sit. Whoever owns it's careful. Careful ain't dangerous, Kyle sneered. Just some old rancher with fancy stock. They waited until the last light died. The wind carried the baying of dogs. The hunt was closing in. Now or never. We spent a long time bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, hit subscribe. Now back to it. Kyle led them downhill through the shadows. A black mare lifted her head as they neared, but didn't spook. Smart animal, Kyle thought. Worth more than just a ride. Jex worked the gate while Bran stood watch. The mare stepped back, too sharp for common stock. Bran produced a sugar cube he'd saved from the prison kitchen. Easy, girl. Just need to borrow your speed. Her ears twitched, nostrils testing the air. For a moment, Kyle thought she'd bolt. Then she stepped forward, proud and poised, as if deciding for herself. Her muscles rolled under her coat as she took the sugar. Throw the saddle on, Kyle Raddick whispered. Bran hurried into the corral shed and came back with tack. The mare stood still as the saddle was cinched, but her calm was wrong, too steady, too aware. The hair prickled on Kyle's neck. Someone's coming, Jex hissed. A lantern flared in a lower window. Kale didn't wait. He swung up and hauled Jex behind him. Bran barely caught the trailing lead as Kale dug in his heels. The mare surged forward with terrifying power, vaulting the corral fence in a single leap before exploding into a full run. A door flew open behind them. A man shouted. Ashthorn didn't hesitate. She was already tearing into the dark. The last thing Kale heard was the sharp, unmistakable click of a rifle being worked. He won't fire, Kale yelled over the pounding hooves. Not with his prize horse between us. They rode hard for an hour, putting miles between themselves and the ranch. Only then did Jex speak, his voice thin. Kale. That voice back there. Didn't it sound familiar? Just some rancher, Kale muttered, though a chill had settled in his gut. There was something about that command, about how perfectly trained that mare had been. What if we stole from the wrong man? Bran whispered. Too late. By dawn they'd be halfway to Canada, or so they thought. Dain Marreck stood in the wrecked corral, reading the tale written in crushed snow. Selka watched from the porch, his old army Winchester resting in her hands. 3 men, Dain said softly, tracing the prints. Prison boots. The heaviest one, Kale Raddick, favors his right leg. Old Helena wound. He let a pinch of snow melt in his palm. They've been on foot at least a day. Desperate. You could let the law take it, Selka said, though she already knew better. Dain studied the oiled gate. They knew enough to grease the hinges. His gaze caught a white fleck. Sugar cube, prison kitchen. This was planned. The moon was fading. 4 hours to dawn. Ashthorn's tracks ran north toward Canada, smart but predictable. Without a word, Dain went inside. Selka followed as he lifted a loose hearthstone, revealing the leather rifle case untouched for 5 years. A custom Winchester with a precision scope. Are you sure? Selka asked. They're killers, Dain replied, gently unwrapping the rifle. And scared men are worse. He checked the action. Still flawless. He'd cleaned it every Sunday. The old belt slid into place, the weight feeling like an old ghost settling on his hips. "The Apache knew who I was," he said, pulling on his worn buckskin coat. "These boys think they robbed a harmless rancher." Selka watched the legend return, the moccasins, the low-crowned hat, the ammo pouches. "Garin Blythe will have the valley locked down by dawn. Ashthorn will lead them west first, toward Bear Creek," Dain said. "She was trained to." "And you?" "I'll be waiting at Split Rock Pass, where she always goes when she's taken." He buckled on his old spurs, their faint jingle a sound once feared across the frontier. Selka nodded. "I'll have coffee ready when you come back." Selka, Dain Marreck, paused at the door. "If I don't come back—" "You will," she cut in. "You're Dain Marreck. But more than that," she added, steady and sure, "you're not hunting them. You're just taking back your horse." A thin, ghost-quiet smile crossed his face. "That's right. Just taking back Ashthorn." But they both knew that once Dain Marreck lifted his rifle, peace rarely followed. He stepped into the night, his moccasins whispering over the snow. Above him, the northern lights drifted in green and violet ribbons. The old Blackfeet used to say when Death's shadow walked, the spirit fires came to watch. Dawn was still hours away when Garin Blythe found him at the crossroads, already mounted on his spare horse. The marshal barely recognized him. The quiet rancher was gone. In his place sat a figure pulled straight from army dispatches and frontier legends. The buckskin jacket swallowed the gray dawn, and the scoped rifle glinted with lethal promise. "Figured I'd find you here," Garin said, pulling up. "3 posses are forming in Hamilton. We could use a tracker like you." "You know I can't," Dain replied, his voice harder now, edged with memory. "An official chase means rules and red tape. They've got my horse. And if they learn who's after them, they'll panic. Fear makes men sloppy." Garin shifted. "There's more. Fort Benton wired in. The Raddocks had help breaking out. Someone with money paid professionals. So it's not just a jailbreak," Dain muttered, checking his rifle. "Revenge, then, for Kalen," Garin said carefully. "And they've got friends. Bad ones. What's left of Flint Varick's gang is waiting up north to run them into Canada." A cold curve touched Dain's mouth. "Good. Saves me the trouble of tracking them later." "Let the law handle it," Garin urged, "like we did with Varick." Dain turned in the saddle, and Garin fought the urge to retreat. 7 settlers dead, 3 homes burned before you called me in. A rifle cracked across the valley. Snow burst near Dain's horse, neither flinched. "Looks like the welcoming party showed early," Dain said, lifting his rifle in one smooth move. "You'd better clear out, Garin. What's coming isn't official." 3 riders stepped from the trees, guns leveled, hired killers, not Raddocks. "Last chance," one called. "Turn back." Dain answered with motion. Through his scope, the lead man's sight filled his view. The first shot shattered it. The second took the shooter's hat. The third crippled his horse, all in under 3 heartbeats. From a distance, few men could even judge. "That was me being polite," Dain called. "The next 3 go higher. Your call." They bolted, leaving 1 wounded mount behind. Dain lowered his rifle as calmly as he'd raised it. 5 years, Garin breathed. "And you haven't slipped a bit." "Like riding a horse," Dain said. "Or ending men." He turned west. "Tell Selka I'll be back when Ashthorn is." Garin watched him fade into the dawn, buckskin melting into pale light. Old scouts used to say Death's shadow didn't chase you. It simply waited where your road ended. The sun climbed as Dain followed Ashthorn's trail. Every hoofprint told a story. She was doing exactly what she'd been trained to do, pulling the Raddicks west instead of north. Yet something felt wrong. The tracks were too clean, too easy. At a creek crossing, he dismounted, studying the churned mud. Ashthorn had hesitated here, stubborn, refusing the water. Dain could picture it clearly. Cale Raddick, angry, maybe digging in with his spurs. Dain's grip tightened on his rifle, getting soft. Hawkie. The name echoed through Dain Marreck's mind, like a ghost from another war. It had the rough edge of his old captain's voice, the one who first saw the rifleman buried inside the quiet recruit. Time was, the voice whispered. You'd have already put them in the dirt. He shoved that memory aside, jaw tight. But as his fingers brushed over the scope, he realized they were trembling. 5 years of quiet had softened him more than he cared to admit. The rifle, once an extension of his breath, now sat heavy with memories that stung like buckshot. A twig snapped in the brush. Before his thoughts caught up, the barrel swung, old instincts snapping awake. Out from the scrub stepped a boy, Blackfeet, maybe 14, leading a painted pony with quiet reverence. He stopped cold when he saw the rifle trained on him, eyes wide. Then, "You're him," the boy breathed. "Long shot, the one my grandfather speaks of. Says you could clip an eagle's wings without killing it." Dain's arms eased, lowering the weapon. That name still clung to him like blood on an old shirt. "Those stories are dust now, son," he said, voice low. "I'm just here for a stolen horse." "The black mare?" the boy asked, with a white star on her brow. He nodded fast. "Saw 3 Wasakyu, white men, maybe 2 hours west. Father said they looked like bad spirits. Told me to steer clear." "He's right," Dain replied. "You best get home. It might get rough out here." "Are you going to kill him?" the boy asked, innocent and deadly with truth, like you did back then, when raiders came and folks said you stopped them all. The words hit harder than a fist. Was that what he was now? A tale to scare kids by firelight? "No, son," he said, jaw set. "Just want my horse back." But as he rode on, the familiar weight returned, not on his back, but inside him. Cold and calculating, that part of him that had once been feared was stirring again. The trail led into Bear Creek Canyon, steep walls hemming him in, perfect ground for a kill zone. Once, he'd have ridden straight through, rifle ready and soul numb. A sharp crack rang out. Stone burst beside him. His horse reared. Dain swung low, calming the mare with one hand, while the other found the scope. 2 silhouettes stood above the rim, figures framed in snow and sky. Not the Raddicks, hired guns. "That's far enough, Marreck," one yelled. "You turn back now." Dain's eyes narrowed, too visible, likely more hidden. They had the ridge, the range, the numbers, but they'd made one stupid mistake. They spoke. His first shot cracked the air, punching through the talker's rifle, split the stock like dry pine. Second shot kissed the rock inches from the other's face. A warning. Both men dove for cover. Dain stood in his stirrups. "That's 2 rounds, he called, voice calm as thunder. "I've got 8 left. The next one's aimed to finish." Silence. Professionals. They'd heard the legends. Knew Dain Marreck didn't miss, no matter the wind, the range, or the fear clawing at his gut. "You walk now," he added. "Tell your bosses the death shadow rides again." Hooves retreated. Smart choice. But Dain didn't feel pride. What rattled him wasn't the danger. He'd danced that dance too many times. It was how easily the rhythm returned, How right it felt in his bones. "Just getting my horse," he muttered. But the voice in his head laughed dry. They both knew better. Ashthorn wasn't just a horse, and Longshot Marreck was no myth anymore. Inside a quiet cabin buried in snow, Holt Revan, U.S. Marshal, stood over a table littered with old commendations. Faded parchment from the Apache Wars, one signed by General Vaylor Strait himself, lay open beneath his glove. Behind him, Selka watched. "He keeps them to remember," she said. "Remember what?" Revan asked, not looking up. "What he was. What he chose not to become." The Marshal picked up a fresher page, Kale, Bran, and Jex Radek's prison files. "And now these bastards pull him back in. Convenient timing, don't you think?" His tone was loaded. "You mean this jailbreak was planned?" Selka asked. He nodded. "Inside help. Hired riders waiting with fresh mounts. Then they just happened to steal Ashthorn, the one thing that could drag Marreck out of peace." Boots crunched snow outside. A rider stormed in, Garen Blythe, face wind-chapped, breath hard. "Got fresh word," he said. "Wire from Fort Benton." Revan tensed. "Let me guess. Flint Varrick's old crew?" Blythe nodded grim. "Not just helping the Raddocks cross the border. They're riding south, 30, maybe more." Revan swore. "They're using the Raddocks as bait, luring him out." "That ain't the half of it," Blythe said, eyes darkening. Most folks had forgotten about Callan Raddock, the one Dain Marreck had to put down during that Apache ambush. But Callan had kin in high places. His uncle, Thorn Raddock, a former colonel turned railroad mogul, had been moving pieces behind the curtain for years. And now, he was spending a fortune to settle the score. Selka went pale. "A colonel with power and a personal grudge explains the hired killers." "This ain't about justice," said Holt Revan, grim-faced. "They took his horse to bait him. They're pulling Dain into a trap." "Then we warn him," said Garen Blythe, grabbing his hat. "No," Holt's voice rang out, sharp as a rifle crack. "This is federal now. The Raddocks are under U.S. Marshal protection." Selka turned on him, disbelief burning in her eyes. "Protection? They're outlaws. Killers. They might turn witness against a corrupt colonel if we bring them in alive." Holt said. "I'm ordering Marreck to stand down." Selka gave a short, bitter laugh. "You can order till your throat gives out, Marshal. But you don't know Dain like I do. They took Ashthorn. That makes this personal." "Then I'll bring him in myself," Holt said, resting a hand on his sidearm. "Badge or no badge, he'll answer to the law." Selka stared him down, voice low and cold. "Like the law answered Flint Varrick's gang. There's a reason folks sent for Dain. Some men, they ain't above the law. But they sure as hell are its last resort." Outside, thunder rolled deep across the valley. A storm was coming, clouds heavy with more than rain. Somewhere out there, Dain Marreck was riding toward a trap, and behind him, the law was racing to stop him from walking straight into it. God help anyone who stands in his way, Garen muttered. No one argued. The homestead was still smoking when Dain arrived, 3 hours too late. The charred remains told a brutal tale, shattered dreams and burned-out hopes. Ashthorn's tracks ran straight through the yard, but something about the way they laid in the snow raised Dain's hackles. A gray-bearded man sat slumped on an overturned wagon, blood seeping through a bandage on his arm. Beside him, his wife picked through the ruins, silent and hollow-eyed. Their grandson sat clutching a dead border collie, face streaked with ash and tears. "Marreck," the old man rasped, recognizing him. "Knew you'd show up sooner or later, chasing that trail." Dain dismounted, crouching low over the snow. His sharp eyes read the ground like scripture. Ashthorn had resisted here. Deep cuts in the frost showed the mare had tried to throw her riders twice. They did this, he muttered. His tone was flat, deadly. The truth was older than the ashes. Dain Marreck had been selling U.S. Army rifles to raiders, covering his tracks through his nephew's patrol. When Dain exposed it, the colonel had nearly faced a court-martial. Dain Marreck, blinded by loyalty, picked the wrong side. Now it was all repeating. Except this time, the colonel had money, time, and every bitter outlaw who blamed Dain for their disgrace. This wasn't just payback. It was war. A shot cracked in the distance. Not close. A warning. 2 riders emerged from the tree line, rifles across their saddles. Army horses, outlaw gear. One called out, voice crisp with training. "That's far enough, long shot. Colonel sends his regards. Trail ends here." Dain peered through his scope. Cavalry by posture. Probably ex-command under Marreck. Good riders, maybe decent shots. But their reins were wrong, too loose for a fast draw. "Been a while since I took orders from army men," Dain said coolly, "especially deserters wearing stolen colors." "Times change," the rider sneered. "Colonel pays better than scout wages." Dain's voice cut through the snow like steel. "The last man loyal to him died at Broken Skull Pass. His own kin. Weighs heavy, don't it?" The second rider flinched. "How'd you—" "You always wore your spurs backwards," Dain said. "Bad habit for a cavalryman." They reached for their pistols. Too slow. Dain's first shot split the silence before they even cleared leather. It clipped Draylen Creed's horse by the bridle, making the beast rear with a startled cry. The second shot ripped the hat clean off his partner's head. By the time either of them got their bearings, Dain Marreck had vanished into the whiteout, swallowed whole by the storm. "Ghost Rider," one of them muttered, voice tight with fear. "Like the old tribes say, death's shadow rides the winter wind." Dain pressed on through the blizzard, wind clawing at his coat, cold burrowing deep into his joints like old regret. Years of scouting had sharpened his instincts, and every one of them screamed he wasn't alone. Eyes were on him, somewhere out there, waiting. It was a trap. He knew it. But he couldn't turn back. Ashthorn's trail was fading fast, nearly lost beneath fresh snow. The mare wouldn't last long, not under them, not without him. By dusk, he found a half-burned camp tucked beneath a rocky overhang. The coals still held heat. They'd lingered too long, likely arguing. He could tell by the scattered tracks. Ashthorn hadn't eaten or drank, loyal to her old training. Stubborn girl. Near the fire, a piece of paper had been pinned down by a rock, left for him. He scanned the clearing for wires or trip lines before he reached for it. The handwriting, crisp, arrogant, was unmistakable. Scout Marreck. "Did you think I wouldn't learn the truth? That it wasn't your report that shattered everything I built? I've spent 5 years preparing for this moment. Now, you'll know what it feels like to lose it all. Your reputation for mercy, your weakness. You'll follow them, because they've got your precious horse, and you'll try to bring them in breathing. That nobility will be the end of you. 30 of my finest weight at Broken Skull Pass. Every one of them has reason to want your blood. Come dawn, we end this. Or you can ride away. Leave your horse, leave your principles. Save your life. Live knowing you turned your back on everything you ever stood for. Choose wisely, Scout. Either way, your legend dies here." Dain Marreck, formerly colonel, 7th Cavalry Dain read it through once, then again, then fed it into the dying fire. The colonel was right about one thing. Dawn would settle this. But he'd made one mistake. Mercy wasn't a weakness. Mercy was knowing when to put it down and pick up the gun. As darkness fell, Dain found shelter in a wind-carved ravine. His fire was no bigger than a lantern flame. Enough to warm his hands, not enough to give his position away. The storm grew worse, but that worked in his favor. The snow would pin the Blackwoods down, wear them thin. From his saddlebag, he pulled out a weathered leather-bound journal. His old scout's log. Inside, detailed sketches of broken Skull Pass, each route, each choke point, sniper nests marked in faded ink. He'd drawn them after the last fight here. Some part of him must have known this day would come again. The crunch of hooves snapped him alert. 2 riders appeared from the curtain of snow. Selka, wrapped in a thick wool cloak, and beside her, a young officer in a spotless cavalry uniform. They dismounted slowly, hands visible. "Nathan," Selka said softly as she knelt near the fire. "This is Lieutenant Tyron Vox. He's got something you need to hear." The young man looked nervous under Dain's stare. "Sir, I'm with Colonel Reynolds out of Fort Benton," he began. "We've been tracking Thorn Raddick for months now." Dain narrowed his eyes. "This about the rifles?" Vox swallowed hard. "It's more than that. Raddick was part of a ring. High-ranking officers selling more than weapons, patrol routes, fort maps, troop schedules." Dain's jaw tensed. "When your report exposed the rifle scheme," Vox continued, "they cut him loose, made him the fall guy to keep the others safe. Now he's pulling every corrupt soldier and officer who's got something to lose into this trap. They're not just coming to kill you," Selka added quietly. "They're coming to silence you." "How many?" Dain asked. "More than 30, said Vox. 2 full rogue cavalry units, and Flint Varick's gang riding shotgun, Gatling guns on both ridges. Sharpshooters in every outcrop. Sir, walking in there alone would be suicide." Dain looked back at his journal. His finger traced a narrow, hand-drawn trail cutting behind the ridge. "You think I'm going through the front?" Selka smiled, just barely. "You got another plan?" "He thinks I've gone soft," Dain said. "Forgot who taught him mountain warfare to begin with." Vox leaned in. "Sir, there's an old Blackfeet trail behind the pass. Drops in from the high cliffs. Rough going, barely a goat path." He glanced at Selka. "That's why you brought him," Dain said. She nodded. "Vox leads the best wilderness troop at the fort. 20 riders, all volunteers, all waiting on your word." "The colonel's force triples ours," Dain Marreck said flatly. Tyron Vox looked him square in the eye. "His men fight for a paycheck," he said, low and steady. "Mine fight for honor. We've buried too many good men trying to shield these devil's secrets. That ends now." Dain studied the young lieutenant. There was a certain fire in him, a flash of what Michael Raddick once was, before the darkness took root. "Your men understand what they're walking into? Outnumbered, riding with a disgraced scout?" "With all due respect, sir," Tyron said, steel in his voice. "Ain't no one thinks you're disgraced. You gave up your career to drag corruption into the daylight. We've been waiting 5 damn years for a shot at finishing what you started." Selka stepped forward, holding out a folded paper. "Signed by Colonel Ashcroft an hour ago," she said. "You're reinstated, Dain. Full authority as Army Scout, cleared to lead troops in the field." Marreck took the document and stared at it for a long breath. The seal glinted under the lantern light. "This isn't revenge," Tyron said. "It's justice. and a reminder to men like the colonel that legends don't die. They bide their time. Then they return. How soon can your men be in position? 4 hours, Tyrant said. We'll come down off that ridge like ghosts. Won't make a sound till it's too late. Dain rolled up the maps. I'll keep their eyes on me. When you hear my rifle crack, that's your sign. Selka looked to the sky. Storm's on our side. No moon tonight. A good night for hunters. As the others turned to go, Tyrant paused. Sir, what about your horse? A faint smile crossed Marreck's lips. By dawn, Ashthorn will have done her part. I trained her for this. Once they'd gone, Dain unlatched the old rifle case and stared at what lay inside. A medal he hadn't looked at in half a decade. Given for valor beyond the call. He pinned it to his jacket, the weight settling like something long missing. The wind howled around the cabin, but a strange calm sat inside him. Blood would come. Judgment, too. The colonel thought he was setting the trap, but he'd forgotten an old hunter's truth. The deadliest predator doesn't come head-on. He circles back and strikes from the dark. Midnight, Hollow Reach Canyon. Dain Marreck yanked on Ashthorn's reins again. The mare stood her ground, unmoved by curse or threat. Damn horse, he growled. She flattened her ears. Snow swirled in sheets around them, the storm growing meaner by the minute. Maybe we wait it out, Bran muttered, checking their supplies. Storm's only getting worse. We rest when we reach the colonel, Dain snapped. Move. He drew his pistol and shoved the barrel against the mare's head. Ashthorn erupted like lightning, rearing high and twisting sharp. Dain hit the snow hard, breath ripped from his lungs. The gun vanished into the white. Told you we should have taken the brown one, Jex muttered, dragging his brother up. This one's too damn smart. A whistle cut through the gale, 3 sharp notes, cold and clear. Ashthorn's ears pricked forward. She bolted, not north, not south, but east, straight up a ridge of shattered stone and ice. She's gonna die up there, Bran said, but even he didn't believe it. No, came the voice, calm, low, close as the wind. I trained her to find that trail. I trained her to buck anyone who dared steal her, and I trained her to come home. The Marreck brothers scrambled, weapons drawn, backs to the stone. Show yourself, Dain shouted, panic sharpening his tone. Why? Dain's voice floated from the dark. So you can waste the little ammo you've got left? A single shot cracked. Jex fired blindly into the snow. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. 1 bullet left, Dain said coldly. Jex's rifle's been empty since that family you burned out. Bran's got 2 shells in that scattergun. Shoddy work for hired guns. The brothers exchanged startled looks. He was close. Closer than they thought. The colonel's waiting, Dain tried, shouting into the storm. You really think you'll get through us? But the wind offered no reply. Only the storm and the silence of a man who'd already made peace with what came next. 30 men with orders to shoot you on sight. You really gonna die for a horse? The words drifted down from above, cool as the snow swirling through the canyon. A figure shifted from the rocks, just a shadow, and then gone again. The Marreck brothers flinched, weapons raised. But Dain Marreck had already vanished into the wind. Tell me about the colonel. His voice came again, from a different ridge. Why'd he break you out of that hellhole? You know damn well why. Dain Marreck snapped. He wants revenge for Michael. No, Dain said, his voice steady as a drawn blade. That was just a cover, he went on. Michael's death was convenient. But the colonel's after something. Something worth staging this whole trap for. Burning favors with half the corrupt brass in the territory. Bran's mouth twitched. The ledger," he muttered before he could stop himself. "He's after the damn ledger Michael took." "Shut up," Cale hissed. But it was too late. Silence fell again. And somehow that silence felt worse than Dain's voice. It lingered like a fuse burning low. Then came the reply, colder than the wind. Of course, Michael wasn't just running with raiders. He was carrying evidence, names, dates, accounts, ties that bound not just the colonel, but half the damn officer corps and the politicians protecting them. A bitter laugh echoed down the canyon wall. 5 years, Dain said. 5 years I kept that truth locked away. Thought maybe the army would fix itself. Maybe someone had come along who still believed in honor. The wind shifted. Instead, the colonel gathered all his co-conspirators in one place, thinking they came for vengeance. A beat, but they're walking straight into their reckoning. "You're surrounded," Kyle growled. "No way out. You'll never make it." "I already have." And the calm in Dain's voice sent a chill deeper than the storm. "You just helped bring every rotten soul in the territory right where I needed him. And you three, you're gonna help me finish this." "Like hell," Jex barked. "We ain't helping no ghost with a death wish." "You don't have a choice," Dain said, his voice steady. "Your rifles are near empty. Your horse is gone. Storm's only getting worse, and you're standing in a kill zone I've used before." He paused. "But I'm still offering the same deal I gave your brother, Michael. Surrender to real justice. Tell the truth. Live. And if we say no?" A rifle cracked. Kyle's revolver exploded from his hand. Another shot. Bran's belt dropped, gun clattering into the snow. A third, Jex's shotgun tore apart at the breech. Dain's voice returned, quiet as snowfall. "That ain't really an option anymore." For a long beat, only the moaning wind spoke. Then Bran stepped forward, both hands lifted. "He's right," he said, voice low. "Michael died trying to keep the colonel's secrets. I'm not dying for him, too." Jex nodded. "We didn't sign up for this. Prison was one thing. But this is treason." Kyle stared at his bare hands, at the dark around them. "The colonel will kill us if we talk." "He won't live past noon," Dain said. "Scout teams are already moving. Good men. Men who waited 5 years to see this filth brought down." Behind him, Selka stepped from the trees, rifle steady. Tyron Vox followed, along with 2 more scouts, silent, resolute. Dain's voice came one final time. "Your choice, Cale. But make it fast. We've got work to do before the sun breaks." Far above, a sharp, familiar whinny rose from the ridge. Ashthorn. She'd found the hidden trail, just like Dain trained her, and now she was calling the others to follow. Cale Raddick looked to the snow-choked sky, then to his brothers. 5 years in chains had taught him when a fight was lost. "All right," he muttered, breath white in the cold. "What do you need to know?" Dain stepped from the shadows, rifle cradled loose in his arms. "Start with how many men the colonel's got, where they're stationed, what they've been ordered to do. Then we'll talk about that ledger, why he's so damn desperate to get it back." As Kyle spoke, more scouts emerged from the storm, camouflaged in white, eyes sharp, boots silent. The trap set for one ghost had become a noose for the whole corrupt order. High above, Ashthorn stood on the ridge, steam rising from her flanks like smoke from an omen. Her work was done, Now it was Dain's turn, to end what began 5 winters ago, when a young lieutenant's death sparked a fire deep enough to burn the rot from the army itself. Kyle used a stick to sketch out a crude map in the snow. He split the past into 3 sectors, he said. 20 men up on North Ridge, 2 Gatlings. South Slopes got 15 more, including Flint Varick's old crew. And the rest? Reserves, mounted. He'll send them wherever the fight breaks. Lieutenant Tyron Vox squinted down at the rough sketch spread across the rock. Heavy coverage on both ridge lines. They're braced for a straight-on charge. Because that's the only way the colonel remembers me, Dain Marreck replied, voice low and steady. Head on, guns blazing, hitting targets no man should be able to hit. He's still fighting the ghost of who I was 5 years back. There's more, Bran Raddick added, stepping into the lantern glow. Colonel Thorn Raddick has a personal guard now. 10 men, all former cavalry, served with him in the old days. They ain't mercenaries. They believe in what he's doing, think the army betrayed him. Selka narrowed her eyes. How many of them were in on his scheme from the start? All of them, Jex Raddick said grimly. They fall if he falls. Dain didn't flinch. His mind was already spinning through consequences. That ledger held names, all of them. No wonder they'd rather die than let it fall into army hands. A scout slipped out of the gloom. Sir, movement on the North Ridge. Signal fire's going up. They're prepping for first light. They expect we'll wait for the sun, Tyron said. Easier shooting in daylight. Then we don't wait, Dain said, turning to his assembled riders. Lieutenant, take your men along the hunter's path. Selka, guide him once you reach the overlook. Don't strike till I signal. And us? Kyle Raddick asked, glancing at his brothers. You're riding with me, Dain said. Your uncle needs to see you breathing. If he suspects a trick, this whole thing burns. You're using us as bait, Bran muttered. No. Dain's voice was iron. I'm giving you the chance to set things right, to stop the bloodshed. A gust of wind swept through the camp, and with it came the distant rhythm of hooves. South approach, a scout shouted. Single rider, white flag. From the curtain of snow, a rider emerged, draped in graying Confederate cavalry colors, bearing no mark of the U.S. Army. The insignia stitched to his coat matched one man's legacy. Selka whispered, Colonel Herrick's Vaughn. Should be dead, Tyron Vox muttered. Was supposed to hang after they caught him running guns to both sides during the war. Vanished before the noose found him, Dain added, eyes narrowing. Herrick's dismounted slow and deliberate, hands in the open. Scout Marreck, he called. Colonel Raddick sends his respects. That's far enough, Dain warned. The old Confederate stopped, ice clinging to his mustache. Just a message. And a choice. Dain didn't move. Go on. The colonel's impressed, Herrick said. You tracked his boys clean, outsmarted his scouts. He wants to offer the same deal as 5 years back. Ride with us, $50,000 share. That's 10 ranches worth, Dain said coolly. And if I decline? Herrick's tone turned cold. Then what comes next will be brutal, even for these lands. You're good, Scout, but you're still just one man. The colonel has an army. Dain chuckled, not nervous, deadly calm. The sound rolled through the canyon like thunder. One man? He repeated, stepping forward. Take a harder look, Colonel. Out of the night, shadows began to move. One by one, men stepped from the brush, rifles in hand. Tyron's crew, army-trained scouts, quiet as the grave. Herrick's face went pale. Impossible. Our scouts. Check the roads you expected us to take. Dain cut in. Just like your men are guarding the trails you would have used. He stepped closer. 5 years ago, I was one man with a long rifle. Now, I lead a company who've waited damn near half a decade to scrape the rot from this army. You're bluffing. No, Dain said, final as a grave. Your colonel gathered every crooked officer, every gunslick with blood money on their hands, into one place, right where I wanted them. His voice echoed through the canyon, and in the eyes of every scout around him, the fire of justice burned. By high noon tomorrow, this ends. Every backroom dealer, every oath-breaker, every man who sold his soul for a sack of coin, they'll all answer for it. Marreck's Vaughn's fingers twitched near his holster, but before iron-cleared leather, 3 rifles clicked against his spine. Wouldn't do that. Tyron Vox warned, voice like gravel. The scout's given you the same road he gave the Raddocks, he continued. Lay it down, speak the truth, walk away alive. Or don't, Dain Marreck added flatly. Your decision, Colonel. But best make it fast. Dawn's coming. We've got justice to deliver. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind screaming through the canyon. Then Vaughn's shoulders sagged. You don't get it, do you? He muttered. This ain't just about the army anymore. There are senators in this. Governors, too. Even better, Dain cut in. Write every last name down, 'cause when the dust settles, I ain't just gunning for Thorn Raddock. I'm burning the whole damn thing to the ground. Right then, a distant whinny split the storm. Ashthorn's cry, high and fierce, echoing down from the snowy heights. It was the signal from the mare who'd helped spring the trap. Curtains up. Tyron Vox stepped forward. Sir, we gotta move. 2 hours till sunbreak. Dain nodded. Selka, take Vaughn and the Raddocks to fallback. Lieutenant, lead your men up the cut path. I'll deal with the forward scouts myself. How will we know when it starts? Tyron asked. A grin crept across Dain's face, cold as the storm. Watch the ridgeline. When their signal fires snuff out, that's when you'll know. The others faded into snow and shadow. Dain stayed behind, hand brushing the stock of the rifle that had carved his legend across the frontier. They say revenge is best served cold. But justice? Justice was meant for blizzards in Montana, carried out with a steady rifle, a fast horse, and silence on your side. Thorn Raddock was about to learn why they called him Longshot. The storm was howling full bore now as Dain ghosted through the dark like a wraith. Raddock's boys had placed their signal torches with military care, each one guarding a key point in their defenses. But they'd slipped. They'd timed their shifts by garrison clocks, not by the mountains. That mistake bought Dain 3 golden minutes. Plenty for a man who knew every hidden cut and cave in these hills. The first post vanished without a shout. Its guards, bound and gagged in the mouth of a cave, still breathing. The second followed inside 30 seconds. Its sentries never even spotted the shadow slipping through their bones. By the third fire, the pattern had written itself. Only there weren't any eyes left to read it. On the North Ridge, Captain Sorrel Dreven, once proud of the 7th Cavalry, now Raddock's right hand, noticed the creeping silence. One by one, signal torches blinked out like dying stars. No gunfire, no alarm, just silence. Sorrel squinted into the blizzard through his spyglass. Check the western trail, he barked. Something's... He stopped. His scout's face had gone sheet white. Sorrel turned slow. He didn't need to ask. Dain Marreck stood 10 steps away, rifle low but ready. Ashthorn, ghost-like, emerged behind him, frost glittering on her coat. Evening, Captain, Dain said, quiet as snowfall. Been a while. Sorrel's hand twitched toward his holster. "You're boxed in, Scout. 50 men. 47. Dain corrected. "Your West Guards are napping. Gatling gun?" He nodded toward where it should have been mounted. "Let's say. It ain't exactly serviceable." "Impossible," Sorrel hissed. "Our scouts checked where you would have come from." Dain cut in. "Problem is, I trained this setup, built these defenses, 5 years back, when Marreck still wore honor like a badge." Sorrel's eyes hardened. "You don't know what went down." "I know it all," Dain said, pulling a worn leather book from his coat. "Michael Marreck's ledger, every deal, every name, every coin." He flipped to a marked page. "Including yours, Captain. $20,000 for sneaking shipments past Fort patrols." "That's a damn lie." "Page 43, Dain said calmly. "Bottom right, right below Thorn's signature." The same scrawl. That signature showed up on every requisition slip tied to the vanished rifles. Guns that somehow found their way into the hands of raiders. Sorrel Draven's composure cracked. "The colonel said you died with that ledger," he muttered. "Michael tried to burn it before you shot him." "He tried to burn it," Dain Marreck said evenly. "But he was just a kid, scared, sloppy, trusted the wrong man when Thorn Marreck swore nobody would get hurt." "Just business," the colonel said. "Just profit off a war that was already bleeding." "You've got nothing," Draven snapped. "I've got everything," Dain countered, voice steady. "Names, dates, draft transfers, enough rope to hang every man in this pass." His tone softened. "But that ain't why I'm here, Marcus." The use of his first name hit Draven hard. Then why? "Because of Illyra." The name hit like a hammer. Draven recoiled. "You don't get to say her name, not after what—" "After I wrote her," Dain cut in, stepping forward. "Told her how her husband really died. Told her how her brother got butchered in a raid supplied by the same officers sworn to protect him." She deserved the truth, Marcus. Just like every man in this past deserves to know what they're actually fighting for. Draven's hands trembled now. "Marreck'll kill you for this." "No," Dain said with chilling finality. "He's already finished. Scouts are up on the ridge now. By sunrise, every dirty badge and hired gun here will stand in front of judgment." He let that settle. "Only question is, will you stand with that judgment? Or die protecting a man who sold your honor for silver?" The only answer for a moment was the wind whispering through the storm. Then Draven's shoulders sagged. "She never forgave me, did she?" "No," Dain said gently. "But she asked me to give you a choice. The same one I gave Michael. Surrender. Testify. Live." Draven's eyes drifted out across the pass, where Marreck's men waited, unaware their defenses had already been breached. "What do you need to know?" "Everything. Starting with where Marreck keeps the real records, not just the ledger." "His saddlebags," Draven said after a pause. "Never lets them out of his sight. There's a false bottom. Documents in there could bring down half the territorial government." "And the men out there?" Dain asked. "Most are just hired steel. Show 'em proof, they'll scatter." "But his personal guard, 10 men from the war, they'll never surrender. Then they die," Dain said matter of fact. "That ain't my call. That's theirs." A whistle sliced through the storm. 3 short blasts. Every man who'd ever worn army boots knew what that meant. Scouts in position. "Time to decide, Marcus," Dain said quietly. "Illyra's watching this trial. Verdict's already cast. But your word could stop another wife from burying her man, because some bastard wanted a cut of blood money." Draven looked at his sidearm. Then the ledger, the weight of guilt in ink. Finally, he drew his revolver, not to aim, but to offer it grip first. "I used to be a good soldier," he said hoarsely. "Before Thorn Radek taught me honor had a price." "Honor always has a price," Dain replied, taking the weapon. "Mistake is thinking it's measured in coin." Signal fires blinked out across the ridge like dying stars. The wind howled louder, carrying the sound of men shifting into place. The trap set for one man was about to catch a whole brotherhood of betrayal. Ashthorn nickered softly, nudging her nose against Dain's shoulder. The mare knew. 5 years of waiting. 5 years since betrayal carved its scar across the soul of a man once called Longshot. "Get your men to stand down," Dain told Draven. "No need for them to bleed for Radek's lies." "And the Colonel?" "He'll face the same choice Michael did, and the same you just made." Dain checked his rifle. The cold steel shimmered beneath the storm. "But I got a feeling," he said darkly, "he won't choose as wisely." Draven gave a slow nod. "You know he'll come for you, even if every other man lays down arms. I'm counting on it. No rage, no hate, just finality. 5 years ago, I gave him a chance to face justice with dignity. He chose to feed his own kin to the wolves instead. Now," Dain whispered, mounting up, "he's out of choices, and I'm out of mercy." The wind roared like a thing alive. Horses snorted nervously in the distance, hooves stamping at the earth. And Ashthorn stood sentinel, her coat catching snow, her eyes fixed west, where vengeance waited. The last chapter of the legend was about to be written, not in ink, but in fire, thunder, and steel. When the sun rose over Broken Skull Pass, justice would ride with it. Inside the wind-battered command tent, Captain Sorrel Draven leaned over a battered map table. Rough sketches of mountain trails and red marker units scattered across the parchment like blood. "He shifted everything last night," Sorrel said, nudging a few markers westward. After Herrick's Vaughn didn't report back, Thorn Radek tightened up, pulled all his units into this ravine here. His finger tapped a sheltered cut in the rock. "Smart move." Dain Marreck narrowed his eyes at the map. "Harder to flank. Clean lines of fire. He's bracing for a full charge at sunrise. 'Cause that's how I used to play it." Sorrel glanced sideways at him, voice edged with respect. "He's fighting a ghost, the man who used to charge through hell and take his shot at the devil's eyes." Marreck's stare didn't waver. "Tell me about his inner ring." 10 men, all ex-officers," Sorrel said grimly. "Draylen Creed commands them now. Remember him from the Ash River campaigns?" "Too well," Marreck replied. "He was good once. Radek must have dug him out of disgrace." "He did," Sorrel muttered. "Saved every one of their skins from court-martial. Bought their loyalty with second chances, and twisted it into something darker." Before Marreck could respond, the tent flap whipped open. A snow-covered sergeant burst in. "Sir, rider incoming from the East Ravine, claims he's from Colonel Radek's staff." Marreck vanished into the shadows, while Sorrel stepped outside. A lone rider pushed through the storm, his coat marked with captain's bars. "Dast Valen?" Sorrel called, recognizing the colonel's aide. "What brings you through this freeze?" Dast swung down stiffly. "Colonel sent me. Wants updates. Signal fires are out, posts silent." He paused. The air had shifted. The men surrounding Sorrel hadn't drawn their weapons, but their hands were close. "Marcus." Dast's hand inched toward his holster. "What's this?" "It's over, Dast," Sorrel said, calm but unflinching. "The scheme, the smuggling, the blood deals. done. You've got a choice to make. There are no sides, Dast growled. Only loyalty. Loyalty? Sorrel spat. He used our trust to twist us into criminals. He gave us a second shot. Dast fired back. He gave us blood money, said another voice, steady, cold. Dain Marreck stepped out of the gloom, rifle slung low but ready. Money paid for settlers lying dead in frozen fields, for families burned out of their homes. Dast's face paled. You're supposed to be dead. The colonel said. The colonel says a lot of things. Marreck cut in, like promising no one would get hurt when Jex Radek moved rifles across Apache land. You think Callan knew his uncle would use him as bait? Dast's mouth twitched. You don't get it. The colonel has backers. Vaylor Strayed, maybe even Orrin Thatch. Heard that before, Marreck said coolly, tossing down the tarnished insignia of Herrick's Vaughn. They're both in chains now. So are Cale and Bran Radek. That ledger you boys kept? It'll bury the rest. Impossible, Dast whispered. We're still holding the pass. No, you're not. Marreck cut in. Army scouts have the ridges. Your Gatlings are out. Half your men are either captured or walked away. He stepped closer. So here it is. Stand tall and face justice. Or fall with the man who sold out everything that uniform ever stood for. Dast looked to Sorrel, saw the weight in his old friend's eyes. Shoulders dropped. The colonel has dirt on us all, he whispered. We know, Sorrel said. That's why we're offering you the same choice Dain gave me. Testify. Live. And if I say no? Marreck didn't blink. Then you die in the snow. Your call. The wind howled between them. Then, slowly, Dast drew his revolver and laid it in the snow. What do you want to know? Everything, Marreck said. Starting with where Thorn Radek is sleeping, and where Draylen Creed's posted his 10 devils. As Dast spoke, more signal fires blinked out across Hollow Reach Pass. High above, Ashthorn watched from a rocky ledge, steam rising from her coat despite the frost. She'd led them here. Now she would witness how it ended. Further down the slope, Lieutenant Tyron Vox's scouts moved like ghosts, cutting through defenses that once seemed impenetrable. The snare built for one man now tightened around every crooked officer and hired killer in the ravine. They weren't all evil, Dast said quietly. Some were just lost soldiers who forgot the way home. I know, Dain Marreck said as he checked the rifle's chamber, the click of metal barely audible over the wind. That's why I'm giving them a chance to find the trail again. He paused, then added with iron certainty. And Thorn Radek, he lost his way a long time ago. The moment he decided gold weighed more than honor, more than his own kin's life. The storm above Hollow Reach gathered like a war drum, clouds swelling as if the land itself braced for reckoning. In 2 hours, the sun would crack over Broken Skull Pass, but justice would rise long before the light. The name of Longshot had circled in hushed tavern tales for years, of shots made across canyons, of a ghost that never missed. But tonight, it wouldn't be legend. It would be judgment. Some debts, after all, aren't settled with coin, only blood. Inside his command tent, Colonel Thorn Radek scowled at the dim lantern light and the scattered maps. Outposts had gone silent. No gunfire, no alerts, just gone. Impossible, he muttered, tracing his gloved finger over the snowy ridgelines inked onto parchment. He had 3 defensive rings, each overlapping like a trap, manned by seasoned fighters. Nothing could breach them. Yet something was. Major Draylen Creed burst in, uniform caked with snow. Sir, Valen and Draven, no signal. No return flares. They're just gone. Thorn's jaw clenched. Marreck, he growled. It's him. Creed blinked. Sir? He's picking us off. Quiet, precise, no theatrics. He's isolating our squads, gutting our command. The colonel slammed a fist on the map. We prepped for the shooter, the myth, long shot. But we're facing the scout, the one who trained half these posts. He's not challenging us. He's undoing us. Just then, a young courier shoved the tent flap open. Sir, riders coming from the North Ridge. It's Captain Valen, but he's not alone. Thorn grabbed his spyglass. Through the blizzard's curtain, riders emerged beneath a white flag. Valen and Dreven flanked a third man. The colonel's blood chilled. Harrick's Vaughn, he whispered. They got to him. Creed's hand drifted to his sidearm. If Sherman's flipped, sir. They haven't flipped anyone, Thorn spat. Marreck is offering what he always does, choices, the same damn choice he gave Callan. He nearly choked on the name of his nephew. Surrender, speak, survive. His mouth curled in disgust, as if honor could be bartered like cattle. What are your orders, sir? Bring the real saddlebags. Creed moved fast. The colonel knelt at the footlocker, keys trembling as he unlocked it. No weapons, no bullets, just parchment. Stacks of ledgers, wires, land deeds, bank drafts. Proof of a scheme too vast for mere munitions running. This wasn't just war profiteering. It was the skeleton of a buried empire. Sir, Creed said, returning, saddlebags in hand. They're nearly at the gate. Tell our boys to hold. Not yet. Thorn sorted through the documents like a banker counting his sins. Marreck thinks he uncovered rot in the military. Let's show him what real power looks like. Outside, the wind screamed as the riders passed the outer watch. Thorn Radek emerged into the storm, flanked by his personal guard, 10 killers who'd followed him through war and worse. Captain Valen, he called as the riders halted. You bring friends. Valen looked down, ashamed. Sir, Spare me, Thorn snapped. Where is he? A voice rose from the white swirl. Right here. Dain Marreck stepped out of the storm like a ghost come home, rifle at his hip, snow lacing his coat. Beside him, Ashthorn stood like a phantom, mane glazed with frost, breath coiling in the cold. Been a while, Colonel. Not long enough, Thorn replied, not reaching for his weapon. So what now? You arrest me? Parade me through town for Callan's grave? Dain's voice was quiet steel. Callan was just the beginning. Dain Marreck spoke steady as stone. A thread always leads back to something bigger, doesn't it? That's when Harrick's Vaughn, the grizzled ex-Confederate, stepped forward, eyes like cold iron. Tell him, Thorn. Tell him what we really built out here. Colonel Thorn Radek let out a bitter laugh. We didn't just build outposts and forts, we built an empire. While men like you clung to oaths and honor, we were out here carving real power into the dirt. Real power? Dain echoed, reaching into his saddlebag. He pulled out a folded document and held it high. You see this? Signed by 2 territorial governors and a Supreme Court justice. Immunity, sealed and stamped. Legal shield for every deal you made. Your ledgers? Useless. Unless, he paused, unless they're delivered to the right hands. For the first time, doubt flickered in Thorn Radek's eyes. What are you saying? You think I spent 5 years just chasing horses? Dain's voice never wavered. Every bribe, every backdoor deal, every ghost payment, you left a trail. I followed it, verified it, prepared it. This, right here, is the trap. You're bluffing. Tell him, Vaughn. The old Confederate gave a slow, grave nod. He's not bluffing, Thorn. While we played kings, he built something stronger, a network. Good men, judges, marshals, editors. All of them, waiting. Impossible. We bought everyone. No. Dain cut him off. You tried, but you forgot. Some men don't take silver. Some waited a long damn time to prove it. That's when hooves broke the silence. Riders emerging from the storm, their silhouettes sharp against the snow. Federal marshals with iron badges, army officers bearing the seal of the Judge Advocate General. Even a weary-eyed newsman from Chicago, the same one who tore down railroad magnates with ink and truth. Dain turned to the stunned colonel. Your nephew Callan's ledger wasn't just numbers and rifles. It was names, connections, a web that stretched from Kansas to California. And while you hunted me, he stepped forward. I was waiting for this. Thorn's hands shook as he looked around, his empire unraveling like dry rope. Draylen Creed, kill them all. But the major didn't budge. Neither did the rest of Radek's elite guard. They'd seen what he hadn't. Dozens of scouts had flanked them from the blizzard, rifles raised, sights fixed. It's over, Thorn, Herrick's Vaughn said. The Empire's dust. You going down with it? Never. The colonel's fingers twitched toward his holster. You want justice, Scout? He hissed. Then come take it. What followed burned itself into Hollow Reach legend. Both men drew. Thorn Radek, whose draw had once won battles for 2 armies. Dain Marreck, whose name they whispered across deserts. Long shot. 2 shots cracked like thunder. Radek's bullets split air, nothing but wind. Dain had moved, a sidestep learned from bitter mountain fights. His bullet struck true, not flesh, but steel. It shattered the colonel's revolver in his hand. That was for Callan, Dain said softly. The boy you condemned for greed, you wore like a medal. The silence that followed was deeper than snowfall. Then, slowly, Thorn Radek raised his hands. You've won, Scout. The papers, the proof, it's yours. But then a cruel grin twisted his mouth. But you forgot one thing. What's that? Some men would rather die than wear disgrace. Like a snake, his arm shot forward, a hidden derringer flashing from his coat. But before the gun could rise, Ashthorn reared. The mare struck hard and fast, hooves crashing down. The tiny pistol flew from Radek's hand, landing in the snow as silence fell once more. He stared at the horse, at the beast that had outsmarted him more than once. You trained her well. Better than you trained Callan, Dain answered. He died for honor. You'll live knowing you sold it. Marshals moved in, irons gleaming as the colonel's arms were bound. Behind them, the sky lightened, the first hints of dawn stretching over Hollow Reach. Snow fell gentler now. The Empire had fallen. But the legend of Longshot lived on. Not just a story of a scout who never missed, but a man who believed justice was slow, but sure. Beside him, Ashthorn nudged her muzzle against his shoulder, steam rising from her sweat-slick coat. She'd played her part, from the day she let herself be stolen, to this final act. Some bonds ran deeper than reins, and as Thorn Radek watched his kingdom dissolve into surrender, his voice was bitter. You destroyed everything I built. No, Dain Marreck said, turning toward the rising light. You destroyed it yourself. The day you traded honor for profit, Dain Marreck thought, was the day your end began. Everything since then's just been counting down the minutes. As dawn broke over the jagged trail known as Broken Skull Path, the full weight of what had unfolded settled in. This wasn't just the collapse of one man's crooked empire. It was the spark of a reckoning that would reach into every dust-choked corner of the frontier. Folks wouldn't remember Dain Marreck, long shot, just for the kills that came at impossible ranges or the way he moved like shadow with a rifle. They'd remember the patience it took to wait 5 long years to spring a trap set in silence. Turns out, justice tastes colder when served with snow in Montana, and a man who never misses. "Turn that tent inside out," Dain ordered, his voice like steel scraping flint. The bastard never kept just one copy of anything. The federal marshals moved fast, rifles slung, eyes sharp. Hidden panels inside Dain Marreck's desk revealed more than anyone expected. Letters from crooked officials, supply route maps, even ledgers tied to banks clear out east. "This runs deeper than we figured," Marshal Orrin Thatch muttered, flipping through a leather-bound ledger. "Connections to the Treasury, railroad bosses, foreign hands too," said Colonel Harrix Vaughn, his voice heavy with guilt. He wasn't just running guns. He was trying to build a kingdom, one that controlled every wagon, rail, and mule train west of the Mississippi. "The weapons were only the start," Dain added, eyes narrowing as he studied a set of coded shipping logs. "These routes, patrol schedules, garrison counts, response times." "Exactly," said Draylen Creed, stepping forward now that he'd flipped sides. He sold the Army's secrets to both raiders and ranchers. Whoever paid got protection. Whoever didn't got bled dry. Dain finished. He created the very fear folks paid him to fight. At that moment, Tyron Vox appeared at the tent flap, breath fogging in the cold. "Sir, you need to see this." Out in the thawing snow, at the far end of the camp, sat a line of wagons. Not supply carts. Mobile command posts, outfitted with telegraph machines, presses, everything needed to run a full counterfeiting operation. They weren't just forging orders, Orrin Thatch said, stunned. They were minting their own damn currency. "Territorial script," Vaughn explained. "Looked official, but worth nothing but paper and threats." Meanwhile, the real coin flowed east to their partners in silk suits and tall buildings. Dain ran a hand across the cold steel plates of the press. "So that's why you wanted Michael's ledger so badly. Wasn't about the rifles. It was this. The money." Dain Marreck, bound and bruised, still managed a cold smile. "You don't get it, Scout. This wasn't about coin. We were laying the foundation for order, real order. Controlled, efficient, profitable. Built on blackmail and blood," Dain shot back. Radek's eyes flashed. "While men like you chase ghosts and glory, we built something that worked. A system. One that didn't ask permission." "Worked for who?" Wade stepped in. "The settlers you left to burn? The children buried with no names?" "Necessary losses," Radek said flatly. "You, of all people, should understand that. How many have you put in the ground for a commander's whim?" "The difference is," Dain said, his voice low and lethal, "I never fooled myself into thinking it was for a better world." A commotion stirred at the edge of camp. Hooves on frost-hardened earth, blue coats, sabers, and silver braid. General Valor Strayed himself rode at the head, snow clinging to his shoulders. "Report, Scout Marreck," he barked, dismounting. "Operations concluded, sir," Dain replied. "Dain Marreck's outfit is done. Evidence gathered. Network exposed." Strayed surveyed the camp. Prisoners kneeling, counterfeit wagons smoking, troops digging through ledgers thick with lies. "Well done, Scout. Though something tells me this web's bigger than even this." "Sir," Marshal Thatch stepped forward. "The documents we seized. They name dozens of officials. Might even reach Congress." "I know," the general said, face like carved granite. We've got federal men standing by in 6 territories. Right now, warrants are being executed from Denver to Seattle. Every spoke in the colonel's wheel is coming off. And for the first time, the chill in Thorn Raddick's eyes gave way to fear. The sun crept over Hollow Reach Pass, casting light on the ashes of a fallen empire. You should have seen it coming, Valor Strayed growled. Dain Marreck didn't flinch. If your sources were worth a damn, they would have warned you. They did. Strayed cut in coldly. They just told me exactly what I wanted to hear. A flicker of realization crossed Thorn Raddick's face. You set us up, just like you did Callan. Dain's voice dropped low. Difference is, your nephew died for your greed. Ashthorn stirred beside him, sensing the tension thickening in the dust-choked air. More riders appeared beyond the ridge. Reporters, prosecutors, even a photographer from Harper's Weekly. Valor Strayed nodded to the gathering crowd. No more secrets. No more backroom dealings. You'll never make it stick. Raddick spat. Marshal Orrin Thatch lifted a telegram. Your banker friends in New York are flipping. Turns out honor ain't the only thing that sells cheap. More prisoners were led past the wreckage. Dozens of corrupt officials, rounded up across 6 territories, headed for federal custody. Herrick's Vaughn's eyes were dark with weariness. Your empire's crumbling, Thorn. And your men? Most are trading loyalty for a shot at survival. Thorn Raddick stared at his former mentor with contempt. You too, Vaughn. Betraying everything we built? No, Herrick said, his voice thick with regret. I'm just done pretending it was ever anything more than a temple of lies. Dain Marreck watched the federal agents catalog 5 years of evidence. Paper trails, secret accounts, bribed judges, all of it exposed. But the cost was burned deep into his bones. Ashthorn nudged his arm, steadying him. She understood without words. The mayor's role in all this had been more than a pawn. She'd been the key to bringing the whole rotten thing down. What now? Tyron Vox asked, watching the prisoners get chained for transport. Justice, Dain said simply. The kind you can't buy or bury. As sunlight swept over Hollow Reach, it marked not just the death of a criminal empire, but the birth of something new. Something cleaner. They'd call him Longshot for his impossible aim. But it wasn't the bullet that brought this all down. It was patience, but the storm hadn't passed. Not yet. The next morning in Hamilton dawned clear and biting cold. Dain sat in the telegraph office as Illyra Penn tapped out dispatch after dispatch, spreading the truth to every paper east and west. But the replies. Something in their tone set Dain on edge. Illyra frowned. Third message from Chicago. Their federal prosecutor was found dead. Suicide. Staged. Hell, Orrin Thatch muttered. They're cleaning house, Dain said, jaw tight, silencing anyone who knows too much. He turned to Tyron. Where are the prisoners? 2 days out, headed for Fort Benton. 4 wagons. Heavy escort, but not heavy enough. Dain grabbed his rifle, strapping it tight. Raddick's partners won't let them stand trial. Too many secrets buried in those cells. The telegraph clattered again. Illyra's fingers trembled. Denver courthouse hit. 3 judges murdered. Railroad files stolen. It's starting, Orrin whispered. They're cutting ties, wiping every trace clean. One message after another rolled in. San Francisco bank president, dead. Seattle editor's office, torched. Salt Lake investigator's family, vanished. Tyron's voice cracked. They're not just covering tracks, they're making examples. Ashthorn snorted outside, ears high, muscles twitching. She sensed something. Dain moved to the window. "Rider coming." Through the long glass scope, he saw a figure slumped over a pounding horse, barely holding on. The scout collapsed in the doorway. Blood stained his coat. "Ambush," he gasped. 10 miles north. 20 men. Pros, not bushwhackers. "They took the colonel," Tyron Vox reported, jaw clenched. "Casualties?" 3 dead, the rest wounded. They hit us like they had someone feeding them coordinates. Dain Marreck's eyes narrowed to a blade's edge. Not inside intel. That was military discipline. "Not just hired muscle," added Marshal Orrin Thatch, his voice grave. "These were trained shadows. Ghost ops. The kind the Army keeps off the books." "Colonel Radek's got deeper friends than we thought," Tyron muttered. "Question is, what the hell do we do now?" Dain quietly checked the load in his rifle, each click a quiet vow. "We track them." "That's madness," Tyron said. "Going after shadow units is a death sentence." "No," Dain replied, voice calm as a storm gathering on the plains. "That's justice." He met their eyes. "Those men think they can hide the truth behind blood. But some truths don't die easy, and neither do I." Elira Penn unrolled an old map across the crate they used for planning. "Old Morrison Trail cuts north from the ambush site," she said, tapping the parchment. "Runs straight through Hollow Reach before brushing up near the Canadian line." "Hollow Reach," Orrin murmured. "That place is a maze. Fog's thicker than a liar's tongue." "They'll assume we follow protocol," Tyron said. "Split teams. Flank routes." "Then we don't," Dain cut in, dragging a finger along a crooked path. "We move hard, move loud, but not where they expect." He turned to Elira. "Send word to every badge worth their steel within 2 days' ride. Tell them to meet us in Hollow Reach." "They'll see us coming," Orrin warned. Dain's cold smile answered him. "Good. I'm not just chasing Thorn Radek. I'm flushing out every ghost he ever sent, every officer he bought, every cutthroat he shielded." "That's not a chase," Tyron whispered. "That's a hunt." Dain checked the scope on his rifle. Slow and sure. "They want to play shadow games," he said. "Let's show them what real shadows look like when they fight back." The scout who'd brought news of the ambush looked up, his bandaged shoulders soaked dark. "Sir, they're ghosts. Killers trained to vanish. Professionals." "So am I," Dain answered, his tone flat as a gravestone. "Difference is, I've bled on every trail in these hills, slept in their caves, counted every crack in their godless hideouts. They're trespassing on my grounds now." Hollow Reach lived up to its name, a gorge thick with fog and silence, where shadows walked and the air itself whispered warning. But Dain rode north anyway, and the men followed. Word had spread like brush fire. Something final was brewing. Marshals, rangers, settlers with scores to settle. Even a few repentant outlaws seeking a last shot at redemption. "They're not just wearing badges," Orrin said, watching the growing force ride in. "No," Dain replied. "They're wearing purpose." Ashthorn pressed close to him as the camp came alive under the moonlight. 50 men and more, sharpening blades, checking rounds. This wasn't law work. This was a reckoning. Tyron sat by the fire, scanning old maps. This whole damn thing, it was planned. Radek's people had resources staged. They knew we'd catch up eventually. And they were ready, Orrin said. Probably had that escape route set for months. "Means they also know we're coming," a deputy muttered. "Might even be watching." Oh, they're watching, Dain said, stepping forward with a sheaf of his own sketches. Just not half as well as they think. He laid them out. Caves, trails, old mines, lines of sight. The real map. The one he'd made in silence over 5 long years. They'll move him here. Dain pointed to a scar in the valley. An old mining complex hidden by rock and fog. Natural cover. Multiple exits. Exactly where I'd hole up if I wanted a fight I could walk away from. How can you be sure? Tyron asked. Dain's eyes never left the map. Because I helped write their playbook, he said. Back before I buried Michael. Before I knew what Thorn Radek really was. I trained most of their scouts, taught them how to survive these mountains. But not everything you know, Tyron said softly. No, Dain murmured. Not everything. He snapped his rifle shut with finality. They think they're ghosts, but tomorrow they'll learn. Some shadows don't fade. And as if summoned by that vow, Ashthorn lifted her head toward the ridge. The darkness shifted. Shapes in the mist. Maybe just shadows. Maybe not. They were probing the perimeter, testing for weakness. Every step they made was measured, watching, weighing. Let 'em stare. Dain Marreck said low, eyes fixed on the dark ridgeline. Let 'em think they've figured us out. Tomorrow they'll learn the difference between boys playing shadow and a man who lives in it. Around the fire-scarred camp, men tightened their belts, checked their iron, and murmured to one another in the hush before storm. They knew dawn wasn't just bringing blood, it was bringing purpose. A cleansing. A reckoning. The tale of Longshot Marreck was about to shift. From legend to warning. No longer just a story about a man who could split a silver dollar at 200 yards. But a reminder that sometimes justice had to crawl through the mud and claw through the dark to drag truth out by its throat. And when that sun rose, the men bankrolling Thorn Radek would come to understand. Some debts could only be settled in bone, shadow, and blood. Suddenly, there was movement near the edge of camp. 2 riders came fast, horses lathered with sweat despite the cold. Dain stepped forward. He knew them, army men. Men he'd served beside during the Red Mesa campaigns. Madrek Sorn. He greeted with a nod as they dismounted. Been a stretch. Wish it was under better skies, the major replied grimly. We ID'd the crew that hit the colonel. Black Shield Unit. The name struck camp like a dropped rifle. Men stiffened. Whispers flared. Black Shield. They weren't just ghosts of the army. They were the kind of shadows that never showed up on payroll. Missions the government never claimed. Deaths no one filed. That's impossible, Tyron Vox muttered. They got disbanded after the war. Officially, yeah, Sorn said. Unofficially, they went private. They take contracts now. Any buyer, any silence. Orrin Thatch spat. How many? 24, split into 6-man squads. All ex-special ops, all trained in mountain war. Sorn laid out a string of photos. One caught Dain's attention. Cold eyes, clean cut, no soul behind the stare. Vorin Cade, the major said. He ran Black Shield during the war. Took the cream of the unit when they shut it down. Been hiring out ever since, to groups like Radek's. They weren't just hired muscle, Dain growled. They were the sword arm. Anytime someone got close to the truth, they made him vanish. No body, no noise. Just then, Elira Penn approached, a bundle of fresh telegraphs in hand. Reports are flaring in all over, she said. Same pattern. Black Shield hitting witnesses, lockups, runners. Anybody who might talk. They're not just pulling Radek out, Vox said, paling. They're burning the whole damn thing down. Not just evidence, Thatch added. They're killing hope. making damn sure folks know what happens if you stand tall. Dain stood silent a beat, weighing. Cade's clever, he said finally. He'll expect us to scatter. Try to save everyone. That's protocol, said Sorn. Divide. Protect key targets. Then we break protocol, Dain said firmly. We pull every badge, every blade, every soul with fight left, and bring him here, to Hollow Reach. You've gone mad, a deputy snapped. That'd leave the others wide open. No, Thatch said slowly, eyes catching fire. It forces Cade to choose. Protect Radek or finish cleaning up. He won't risk losing the colonel, Vox said. He'll concentrate his hit teams here. Exactly. Dain nodded, tracing a line across the valley map. We stop chasing phantoms through 6 territories. We make the ghosts come to us. On ground we control, said Sorn, squinting at the cliffs and creeks. Still, Cade's sharp. He'll smell a trap. We want him to, Dain said, mouth curling cold. He'll think he's got us figured. These men, Cade's crew, they ain't used to being hunted. That's about to change. A soft nicker cut the air. Ashthorn, calm as ever, watched the dark. Then came hoofbeats, more riders, dozens, worn hats, scorched coats, but steady eyes. They rode in quiet, but with purpose. Not all lawmen, Elira murmured beside him. Look at him, Dain. He did. Settlers, ranch hands, town folk, people who'd buried kin, folks who'd lost homes to Radek's greed and Black Shield's blade. They didn't come for gold. They came for justice. And by sunrise, justice was coming with teeth. Merchants cheated out of everything they built. Families torn apart by inked lies and backroom deals that never saw justice. Kane's men fight for coin, Orrin Thatch said, voice low and steady. But these folks, they're fighting for something far deeper. For justice, Dain Marreck agreed, eyes hard. And to prove not all shadows belong to the corrupt. Some, they were born in the dark, but they carry the light. As dusk folded into full night, the camp shifted. What began as a scattered posse was transforming into something larger, an uprising. Men and women, drawn not by bounty but by the need to right a wrong that had lingered too long. Selka moved through the twilight like a whisper, her medicine bag swaying at her hip. The spirits stir, Dain, she murmured, her eyes on the horizon. They taste blood in the air. The colonel and his partners thought they could bury their sins in shallow graves, Dain muttered, checking his rifle's chamber. Time they learn some secrets don't stay buried. They'll strike soon, Madrek Sorn warned. Probe our flanks, test for cracks. Let 'em, Dain said, voice granite. Let 'em believe they're the only ones who move through the dark. Come sunrise, they'll understand why the Blackfeet once called me Shadow Walk, long before I was ever long shot. Around them, the camp buzzed with quiet intensity. Ammo was passed, stories exchanged. Every soul had a reason for standing here. This wasn't just about escaped outlaws anymore. This had become something bigger, something sacred, a stand against rot at the roots. And Longshot? He wasn't just a myth anymore. He was a symbol, not just the man who never missed, but the one who dared to stand when others bowed. And now, with dawn coming fast over Hollow Reach, a reckoning rode on the wind. Blackfield would soon understand. Legends don't fade, they rise. And in Hollow Reach, even ghosts leave blood behind. Gray mist coiled like smoke as morning touched the valley. Dain stood high, scanning the abandoned mine complex ahead. Ramshackle buildings, sagging timbers, rusted iron. Perfect ground for ambush. And yet, Something gnawed at his gut. Too quiet, Oren muttered beside him. No lookouts, no stir. They're not waiting, Dain said. His voice clipped. They're already moving. And just then, Ashthorn's ears twitched. The mare's muscles bunched. She felt it before anyone saw it. They come, Selka whispered, crouched among the boulders, like spirits born of frost. Tyron Vox's voice cracked over the wire. North Ridge, 2 squads, army signals. Let them come, Dain answered. Everything's where it needs to be. Oren gave a tight nod. All approaches locked down, escape paths covered. If they're in this valley, they're staying. The first shot whistled out of nowhere. A decoy sniper drawing attention. The bullet skimmed air. A warning. Dain's reply was surgical. 1 shot, 1 shattered scope. The man behind it, unharmed, but rattled. Hell of a welcome, came a new voice from the fog. Voran Cade stepped out like a ghost made flesh. His coat bore no rank, no emblem, just menace. Your legend holds up, he said, calm. So does your ego. Dain didn't blink. Marching men into a box canyon with 1 door out? Not your usual style. Who said there's only 1 door? Cade smirked. We've been prepping this valley for days. Got exits you ain't dreamed of. You mean the shaft behind the smelter? Or the cave you tried blowing open last night? Cade stiffened. How? 5 years, Dain said coldly. Spent 'em mapping this valley inch by inch while you played mercenary. You came with killers. I came with a blueprint. And just then, the earth growled. Boom, boom. Controlled blasts shook the ground. Not attacks, but closures. Escape routes, sealed 1 by 1. No, Cade whispered. You planned for a man, Dain said. You didn't plan for a legend. And you damn sure didn't plan for the scout who learned to hunt shadows. Because Dain Marreck wasn't just Longshot anymore. He was justice, etched in rifle steel and blood. More gunfire echoed through Hollow Reach as Voran Cade's carefully laid escape plans crumbled. His hand dropped instinctively to his holster, only to freeze at the sharp, bone-deep whinny of Ashthorn. The sound cut clean through the smoke, just before a clear voice rang out. Your men are surrounded, Cade. Dain Marreck called through the haze, calm as the desert wind. Not just by lawmen, but by every soul your shadow network ever wronged. Figures stepped from the mist, settlers you terrorized, homesteaders left in ruin, families torn apart, good folks who'd waited years for this reckoning. And finally, they were here. Cade scoffed, his jaw tight. You think these ragtag civilians can stand against trained Black Shield operators? They already have, Dain said coolly, nodding toward the ridgeline where Cade's sharpshooters had once held ground. Now, 1 by 1, the Black Shield soldiers emerged, hands raised high, flanked by Tyron Vox's scouts, stripped of their fight. Your men are professionals, Cade, Dain added. They know a losing ground when they see it. Bede's already back in custody. From the mist stepped Marshal Oren Thatch, rifle steady. Your rescue never stood a chance. The man you broke out? Just a decoy in Bede's uniform. The real colonel's still under federal watch, he finished, voice hard as flint. Cade's lips curled in fury. You played us. Like you played with innocent lives. Dain's voice turned sharp, slicing through the guiltless air. How many people were silenced to protect the colonel's games? How many families shattered to keep secrets buried? We were soldiers, Cade snapped, serving something bigger. You were killers, Dain cut in, hiding greed behind tactics. And then came the final silence. From every edge of the field, Black Shield agents began laying down arms, their masks cracked, their cause dead. "They're surrendering," Thatch declared. "So what's it gonna be, Cade?" In a flash, Cade's hand jerked, snake fast, pulling a hidden derringer. 3 shots answered. The first, from Dain's rifle, shattered the tiny pistol clean in half. The second, from Thatch, slammed Cade to the ground. And the third, fired by Selka, unseen among the rocks, ended any chance he had of rising again. Cade groaned in the mud, clutching his shoulder. Dain stepped closer. "That was for Callan," he said, voice low and steady. "And for every soul you silenced." The mist lifted as federal marshals moved in, rounding up the traitors, seizing the scattered rifles. What began as a manhunt had become a purge, a cleansing. Ashthorn pressed her muzzle against Dain's arm, steam rising from her coat. From behind, Mayor Holt Revan approached, watching the final moments settle into stillness. "It's really over?" Tyron Vox asked, eyes on the captured soldiers. "This part is," Dain said. "But we've only just started. The Colonel's rot runs deep, across every territory, into every crooked office." Marshal Thatch gave a grim nod. "Shadow wars are done. Now comes the digging." As if summoned, riders appeared on the ridgeline. But they weren't soldiers. These were townsfolk, traders, farmers, survivors. They'd come not to fight, but to witness justice. "To watch the shadows fall," Selka whispered. "They'll try to cover this up," she added. "Powerful men always do." "Let them," Dain said, checking his rifle one last time. "Some stories don't stay buried. Some legends shine brighter in daylight." The first rays of sun broke through, lighting up Hollow Reach, revealing the end of the Black Shield and the start of something better. Cade, bound and broken, stared at the ruin of his empire. "You destroyed everything." "No," Dain replied. "We just reminded folks what justice looks like. It ain't about perfect shots or clean uniforms. It's about standing tall in the darkest places." As agents gathered evidence and sorted prisoners, Dain swung onto Ashthorn's back. Holt Revan stepped aside. "Where to now?" Thatch asked. Dain met his eyes. "Wherever the next shadow falls. And when they rise again." "I won't be waiting," Dain said, a slow grin crossing his face. "I'll be hunting." Because some legends don't hide in shadows, they bring the dawn. And as Dain Marreck rode out of Hollow Reach, the people watched. They would tell this story for generations. Not just of a man whose aim never missed, but of the lawman who reminded the frontier that justice could still ride bold and free. Some say Hollow Reach was never the same after that day, that something ancient in its mist and marrow was burned clean, like the valley had memory and chose, finally, to spit out its poison. Even now, folks whisper that wicked men think twice before stepping foot there, recalling the time shadows turned on those who thought they owned the dark. But across frontier towns and windswept outposts, a different tale's taken root. They say a lone scout still rides with his black mare, eyes sharp as winter frost, searching for places where light's too long absent. That when corruption settles in, sure of its safety, something older than law starts moving. Because some debts demand blood, and some legends, they don't end. They just wait for morning to come. A month after Hollow Reach, Dain Marreck stood inside Governor Morrison's office in Helena, arms folded as federal agents hauled out crates of evidence. The investigation had spread like dry grass fire, charring every rung of power. "Final count?" he asked Marshal Orrin Thatch, who was overseeing the sweep. 37 indictments," Thatch replied, flipping through a worn ledger. 12 judges, 5 bankheads, 3 railroad tycoons. Thorn Radek had his claws in deeper than we feared. Selka appeared in the doorway, hands full of papers. Found these in a false safe. Bank records show payoffs reaching senators out east. The ripples just keep spreading, Thatch murmured. Every lead cracks open 3 more names. Marreck zeroed in on a particular document, his eyes sharp, jaw tight. A rail map, planned expansions cutting through tribal lands, paths that would have torn whole nations from the soil. They weren't just stealing coin, he muttered. They were stealing futures. Tyron Vox stepped in next, now wearing the captain's bars earned in the fires of Hollowreach. Sir, you're going to want to see this. Out in the street, a crowd had formed, not with torches or chants, but with quiet, solid presence. Merchants, homesteaders, elders, young folk, Blackfeet, Crow, Lakota, white ranchers. They stood shoulder to shoulder, bearing witness as the walls of power cracked open. They're not just watching, Selka said softly beside him. They're learning that even shadows can be dragged into light. Ashthorn let out a soft nicker near the building's steps, head raised toward a new arrival. A column of army men approached, led by General Valor Strayed, faces grim, uniforms dusty from fieldwork. The military reviews concluded, Strayed said once gathered. 23 officers court-martialed, 15 more under scrutiny. The rot ran all the way to the War Department. And Black Shield? Marreck asked. Gone. What's left turned state's evidence or ran. But Strayed paused, pulling out a weathered leather journal. We uncovered this in their files. Predates the colonel. Goes back to the war between the states. The pages were brittle with age, ink faded. Field reports, battle notes, covert strategies. They weren't just mercenaries, Strayed continued. They were part of something larger. A hidden branch of government, using conflict and payoffs to shape the West from behind a veil. Thatch gave a low whistle. How far up does it go? All the way, Strayed answered. Cabinet men, railroad kings, senators, all twisting the frontier for their own designs. Marreck let that settle, the weight of it coiling tight. That's why they protected Radek's operation like it was gold. It wasn't about profit alone. It was control. And now? Captain Vox asked. Now we keep pulling every thread, Thatch said. We shine light until there's no dark left to hide in. Just then, Elira Penn rushed in, hands ink-stained from the telegraph keys. Word from Washington. The Senate's launching a full inquiry. Every major paper's running the story. They'll try to bury it, Selka warned. Men like that don't give up power easy. Let 'em try, Marreck said, voice low and steady. The shadows are cracking, and sunlight seeping in. As if on cue, the clouds parted over Helena, casting golden light down on the swelling crowd. More folk streamed in, travelers from distant territories, each bearing scars of their own. Stories, loss, hope. What now? Vox asked, eyes scanning the gathering. Marreck slung his rifle over one shoulder. Now? We build what they tried to bury. A West that answers to justice. Not men with ledgers and guns. Strayed nodded. The army's already drawing new lines. No more secret regiments, no more shadows. And the territories? Thatch asked. Marreck gave a thin smile. We're not finished yet. This was just the first sunrise. They'll need watching, Dain Marreck said, voice steady as the wind rolling off the high plains. Power's always got a way of crawling back into the shadows. Ashthorn stood close, her warm breath rising in the chill morning light. Around them, Helena stirred to life. Its heartbeat changed forever. Folks now knew that shadows could be hunted, and they'd seen what happened when someone dared to strike back. Selka, standing nearby, gave a slow nod. "The legend's different now," she said. "Ain't just about sharpshooting and quiet trails." "Good," Marreck murmured. "'Cause that ain't what mattered most. What mattered was hope. Hope that justice could stretch its hand into the darkest corners, no matter how deep the rot." While federal agents combed through evidence, more riders rolled into town. Soldiers who'd fought beside him at Hollow Reach. Marshals who cracked open the conspiracy. Ordinary folks with stories to tell. Witnesses ready to speak truth, no matter the cost. "They're not just watching anymore," Orrin Thatch said, eyes scanning the growing crowd. "They're here to help rebuild what's next." Marreck swung into Ashthorn's saddle, surveying the sea of faces below. What began as a stolen horse chase had turned into something far greater. A reckoning. A reminder that legends weren't just for storytellers. Tyron Vox stepped forward. "Where to now?" "Wherever the shadows still cling," Marreck answered. Thorn Raddick's reach ran far. His partners are out there, hiding behind titles and gold. "That's a hell of a burden for one man," Thatch said. Marreck looked over his shoulder, gesturing to the people gathered. Blackfeet elders, traders, farmers, scouts, children with dirt on their cheeks and fire in their eyes. Who said it was just one man? Because now, every soul here was part of the legend. Every single one had seen the darkness blink first. Above Helena, the sun crept higher, bathing the rooftops in gold as wagons rattled off, loaded with the remains of a broken empire. Decades of corruption, hauled off in chains and crates. But something heavier lingered in the air. Something more lasting. A truth. That justice wasn't carved in courtroom walls or pinned on silver stars. It lived in the hearts of ordinary people willing to stand up, side by side when the shadows crept in. The tale of Longshot had changed. No longer just a story of a scout with perfect aim. It had become a beacon, a memory that some battles belong to everyone. That when good folks rise together, no shadow stands a chance. They say in the years that followed, corruption learned to fear more than a rifle from the ridge. It feared the people who'd found their voice, the ones who learned how to carry light into the darkest places. Because legends, they don't belong to one rider anymore. They belong to all who dare to ride into the dark and refuse to come out without bringing back the dawn. And across the territories, they still whisper about what rose from Hollow Reach. How a man, a mare, and a movement rode out with something stronger than any bullet. Hope. The kind that don't die. The kind that rides on. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production, while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.